Hi there, Chevy owners. Today on your 2012 Chevrolet Silverado, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Demco's Air Force One supplemental braking system. Now, when you flat tow your vehicle, there are 5 main components that you're going to need when doing so. You'll need your base plate, which is the connection point for your tow bar on your vehicle. You'll need your tow bar, which is the component that connects your vehicle to your motorhome. Your safety cables, which is a supplemental connection in addition to your tow bar. You'll need your diode wiring, which takes all the lighting signals from your motorhome and transfers it to the lights at the back of your vehicle so people know your intentions when going down the road. And your supplemental braking system, which will apply the brakes in your vehicle when you hit them in your motorhome to help you come to a safe stop. And this is what our braking system looks like when it's installed. The components are going to be hidden throughout the vehicle, so you're really not even going to know they're there for the most part. Your main unit is going to be located under the hood, and then you have your cylinder that's located on the pedal. The majority of the magic happens here inside the main unit. This is where it receives air in from your motorhome and delivers it to your vehicle proportionately to how hard you're pressing the brakes in your motorhome. And that's what's so great about the Demco Air Force One, is that it is a truly proportional system that works directly off of the air pressure from your motorhome. So the harder you press the brakes in your motorhome, the harder they're going to apply here in the vehicle, ensuring that you get nice, smooth, seamless braking. If your motorhome has air brakes, this is my #1 top pick for supplemental braking systems. Now, if you have a motorhome that has hydraulic brakes, then I would recommend Demco's Stay and Play Duo as my top pick for braking systems. And here you can see the cylinder located on the brake pedal. This cylinder here, when pressurized, will extend and it will pull our pedal towards the firewall, applying the brakes. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the brakes in the motorhome and we'll see that it applies here. And located at the front of our vehicle here, we've got a breakaway switch. So in the event of a catastrophic disconnect, the cable here that is tethered to the hitch at the back of our motorhome will yank the pin out of the center here, and that will apply the brakes on our vehicle. If we pan up real quick before I pull the pin and look on the back side of the mirror, there's an LED located there. That LED kit will only illuminate when the pedal is applied in our vehicle here. So I'm going to pull the pin on the breakaway switch and you'll see the LED illuminate. And there we go. We know that the brakes are now applied because I pulled the breakaway switch pin. I'm going to put the pin back in and that will deactivate the system. You'll get fittings included in your kit to mount at the front of your vehicle, and that'll allow you to attach the coiled airline cable that goes over to our motorhome as well, because we need to have one of those on there, and this is what's actually going to send the air pressure from our motorhome to our vehicle. There's a couple of components you'll have to install on the motorhome side. This is a fairly involved braking system to install, but the best part about it is that when you're ready to go hook up to your flat tow, you simply just have to plug your cable in and your braking system is ready to use. And then of course your breakaway switch cable for that supplemental connection as well. For your motorhome side of your installation, we're going to start underneath the motorhome and get our tank mounted up. We're just in front of the rear axle here, and this cross beam that we've got right here is a great place to mount it. There's plenty of room right in this area. Now, on your motorhome at home, it's likely going to be a little bit different here underneath. All the motorhomes are slightly different, but this should be close enough to give you guys an idea of how to do it on your motorhome at home. So usually right in front of the axle or right behind the axle is a great place to put your tank. In front's usually the best spot because you're typically going to find some kind of cross beam to be able to mount it to in that location. We just drilled out the holes using a 3/8 drill bit, and then we just fed our hardware down and tightened it down. We snugged down our hardware using a 15mm socket and wrench. Once you got your tank mounted up, then we can start plumbing all of our hoses into it. If we look at our tank, we'll see that there's 3 different connection points for 1/4-inch airline. We'll go ahead and start on the left here and work our way to the right. The first one here on our left that's by itself is our supply air, and that's going to be the supply that's going to go to our system. So we'll get our supply from the supply line on our motorhome that's delivering air to the brakes here at the back. So we'll just poke in some of the 1/4-inch airline that comes in our kit, and we're going to route it over towards where our hose is for our supply air. And that's pretty much just straight up above the axle. It just kind of wraps around the tank there and right over to there. This line here gonna go to our supply air. We're gonna tap into the supply for our motorhome. So that runs up over towards where we're gonna tap in, and it feeds over to our supply line. The large green line you hear is the supply line for our motorhome, and it's often gonna be this larger size line here. And it's often green in color just like this as well on most of the motorhomes out there. So you can identify it because it should, if you pull out your fitting that comes in your kit, you're going to get 2 of these T fittings. One's going to be for this larger size hose and one's going to be for the metered air, which is a smaller size. So you can hold this fitting up there too and be like, hey, this looks like it's about the right size. So it helps get you on to determine if that's the right hose or not. Now, I wouldn't cut the hose just yet. I would still verify that that's the correct hose. And the way you would do that is drain the air out of your system. To do that, just simply with your motorhome not running, just in its normal off state, just press the brakes, pump them up, and as you pump the brakes, it's gonna dissipate the air from the system. Once you've removed all the air from the system, you can disconnect this line and we can verify if it is a supply line or not. This is all quick connect fittings for all of our hoses here. So you simply just press in on this collar here and then you can pull the hose out of it. After you pull the hose out, you'll wanna go ahead and start your motorhome. We've drained the air, so that way it's safe to remove the line. And then after you start your motorhome with the line removed, air should be rushing out of that line because that should be trying to supply air to the system. If air is not rushing out of that line, then you chose the wrong line. Once you verified that air is rushing out of it, you know it's the right line, you can go ahead and plug it back in from where you disconnected it from. And then cut your line and insert your T-fitting in place. The other side of our T here in the middle is going to accept 1/4 inch line, so that's exactly what this is. That's that black line that we followed from our tank up to here. Next, we're going to hook up our metered air, and that's this connection here on our tank. This is the solid one that's in the larger fitting that you see here. The one we got over here is a swivel fitting, so you can see it move. So we're going to focus on this one. This one does not swivel. That is our metered air. It's going to run from here over to our metered air connection, so we just follow that back. And this is going to be in a similar location to your supply line near your relay blocks, but it's going to be a smaller size line, closer to like a 3/8 diameter. And again, I would take your fitting that comes in your fit, the smaller of the 2 fittings you get, and I would hold that up to the line to kind of help you identify the line. And then we have a test procedure we're going to use to verify that it is the correct line before we go ahead and cut our line and make our attachment. So our line followed up to here. Here's that smaller, like 3/8 size line, and that's our smaller fitting. Now to identify this line, because you got quite a few there, so it can be a little trickier to find the metered air line, because you do have some similar size lines around here. To determine if you do have the appropriate line, we're going to do a very similar test of the supply. We're going to pump up the brakes without the motorhome running to drain air from the system. After we do that, we're going to come down here so we can safely disconnect our line. Again, you're going to hold that up there to see if you can try to find the relative size, and usually it's going to go to one of these relay blocks here. So then you can disconnect the hose and then go ahead and start the motorhome to let it build up some air pressure. Now there should be no air coming out of this line when you're just sitting there with the motorhome running. What you'll want to do is let a little bit of air pressure build up, maybe give yourself about 50-60 pounds of air, and then go ahead and press the brakes. Have an assistant down here verify if air comes out of the line when the brakes are being depressed. Air should only come out of the line when the brakes are depressed, and air should stop coming out of the line when you let off the brakes. So that's how you can verify that you've got the correct line here. Once you've identified the appropriate one, you're going to cut it just like the other one and place your T in the middle, and our 1/4 inch line is going to go into the 1/4 inch location on that T fitting. And now our last line here, this is the swivel fitting. This is the output from our system here that's going to go all the way to the back so we can get our connection between our motorhome and our vehicle to get that pressure that's going to apply the brakes in our towed vehicle. So simply take your 1/4 inch line, you're going to get a ton in your kit. This is where you're going to use up a lot of that line. You're going to route from this swivel fitting here. We just go down to the frame rail there, and we follow this frame rail all the way back to the very back of the motorhome, where we're going to mount our own connection there at the back and plug our line into it. After you travel down the frame rail, you'll want to bring it all the way out the back here. And then I would say just leave your excess you've got here for now, because now you need to mount up the connector that goes on the motorhome side. You'll get 2 of these connectors in your kit. They look similar, but they are slightly different. One's going to be a male end and the other's going to be a female end. This is the female. It's got the collar on it right here that moves. This is the motorhome side connector. So just mount this up here at the back. Our customer had their 7-way connector mounted on a no drill bracket here. So we just utilized that no drill bracket and we added our own holes and mounted the connector right here using the hardware that came supplied with the fitting. You'll tighten down your hardware using an 11mm socket and wrench. This little cap here just protects it when you're not using it, and then you do get a hose whip in your kit, coiled hose that will plug into here as well as over on the vehicle. This has a quick connect fitting on the back that's also a swivel fitting. So now that you've got your connector mounted up where you want it, any of that excess line that you've got now, you can trim it to the appropriate length and then just plug your line into that quick connect fitting. And that'll wrap up our motorhome side here. We'll begin our installation here underneath the hood. We're gonna get all the main components mounted up, and then we can start running our wires and hoses to get all those pieces connected. The first main part here is our operating unit. We mounted that right here onto the lid of the fuse box cover. And you can see here we just use cable ties. I just held the box on top. We drilled holes down it with a 1/4-inch drill bit on each side, and then just attached it using the cable ties that come in our kit. And here you can just see that on the bottom side. And you want to try to make sure you have enough hose length and stuff here so that way you can still remove this lid and access the fuse box in the future. This is a really weird lid design, so since I put this brace here, this was never an easy lid to remove. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're putting this together, that these are already going to be difficult. So you're probably going to want to give yourself some extra length so that way you can get these in and out. For our breakaway switch, we also mount that here outside. We mount it right here at the front. There's an opening right here at the front that we were able to take advantage of. We did take a piece of metal here and made kind of a Z shape or an S shape, like a double L. And that way there's a factory bolt that was located right down there. So we drilled a little hole in it and we ran the screw, took the screw out that was located there, and then just ran it down to hold our little Z bracket in place. And then we drilled another hole on the other side here so we could attach our breakaway switch to it. We used the hardware that came provided in the kit to secure the breakaway switch. Bolt just drops down, and then we got the larger fender sized washer and the nylon locking nut on there. We want to make sure you are using that nylon locking nut if you want to be able to hide this thing like we are, because the nylon locking nut won't back off. So when you want a flat toe, you can slide that out. And when you're just driving it around town, you can tuck that inside. Next, we need to mount the connector for our airline, what's going to connect between the vehicle and the motorhome. So we got this connector, we mounted it right here into the plastic. Make sure you pick the right one because you get 2 of these, one for your vehicle side and one for the motorhome side. We want the male side to be on the vehicle here. It looks like this. The female side goes on the motorhome and it has like a collar for locking this into place so that way you can tell the difference between them. Now when it comes in your kit, it is going to come in this bracket here for mounting. So it already comes installed into this, but we didn't want to like drill up into anything. This wouldn't look that great. So to try to integrate it into the vehicle a little bit better, we undid the fitting from this piece here. And to do that, we simply used a 1/2-inch wrench on this side, and then we used a 7/16 wrench on the other side and just separated the 2 pieces of the fitting. And then I drilled a 3/8 hole here past the fitting through and then just reattach the 2 pieces together. I did go find a second washer. This washer that you see here on the outside does come attached to this here on the outside, but there wasn't one on the other side, so I did grab another one and I put that on the inside. That way we got a washer on both sides of our paneling here to make sure that it stays secure. So we got the exterior parts mounted up. Now we're gonna head inside the vehicle to mount up the interior parts. We're on the driver's side. This is our brake pedal right here. The cylinder that comes in the kit will clamp around the brake pedal arm right here. And you can see here's the pieces. When you get it, they'll be together like this. Just remove the nuts and then you can slide this piece of metal here off. And just hold your cylinder up there, slide the metal strap here back on, and then just reattach it with the nuts. This is a 3/8 socket size you'll use to tighten these down, and I don't actually use a ratchet. I just use the socket in my hand and just tighten it that way, alternating back and forth, because as you tighten this down, you'll tighten this one down and the other one here is going to get loose. and just kind of go back and forth, making sure they all get snug. If you use a ratchet, you can over tighten it, and once you bend this piece, it's not going to clamp as properly as it's supposed to. So if you use just your hand and tighten it, that way you'll see it's got a subtle bow to it, and it's on there very secure, but it didn't bend the metal to a point where it damaged it. Coming out of the back of our cylinder, you have a cable. This cable needs to be tethered to the firewall, so that way when the system activates and the cylinder here extends, it pulls the pedal towards the firewall. We want to try to make this as straight of a line as possible from our cylinder back to the firewall there to prevent from chafing on the cable. You'll notice that this metal plate here, this comes in your kit. It's not necessary, it's just a reinforcement plate. We decided to go ahead and use it. There's 3 holes in this plate. I just pulled off this wiring right here from the little stud that was there, and I slid the plate with 1 hole over the stud and then just clicked the wiring back on to hold it in place. And then we used the self-tapping screws that came in the kit. First I did the outer one over on the opposite side to kind of hold it level, and then the middle one we ran our anchor that's on the back of our cylinder here into place using that screw. Afterwards, you'll then want to adjust the length of the cable to where you have just a little bit of slack like this here. We got just a little tiny bit. You barely see any movement, but you can hear the click of having a little bit of slack. And the way you'll adjust this is just by pulling the length of cable through. You want to make sure you've got a loop here like you see, and then on bottom down here there's a set screw that you'll use a number 4 Allen key to tighten down. Now you want to make sure not to over tighten it because you can damage the cable. What I've found is that if you tighten it until it's about flush here on the bottom, that's secure enough to hold the cable in place but not overly tight to where it's going to damage it. The only other thing you need to verify before you adjust your cable is if you have adjustable pedals. If you do have an adjustable pedal, which is obvious because you have a switch on your dash, and also if you look up here, this motor that you see right here, if you see that you got a motor on your brake pedal, that's for the adjustable distance that you can set for your pedals. You want to make sure you have them fully adjusted out as close to the driver's seat as far as possible. This may not be where you normally drive it, but it's where you want it set for when you're flat towing. That way when you adjust this cable, let's say for example you weren't all the way out, you were only at a midway spot and you adjusted your cable. Somebody goes to get in your car that's a little bit shorter than you and they adjust the pedals a little bit closer. What they're doing then is applying the brake pedal. So it's important for safety reasons that it's fully adjusted all the way outwards towards the seat when you set this cable depth if you have adjustable pedals. Next, we're going to install the light that comes in our kit, and it's located here. I've already got it wired up. This will make it a little easier for you to see. This is just double-sided adhesive on the back of the LED strip here. Just pull that backing off and stick it onto the back of your mirror. And you can put it wherever you want. This is just usually an easy spot to identify when pulling your vehicle behind your motorhome. You can usually see this pretty well. The wiring from there just routes up and along the headliner here. And we're just poking it up into the headliner all the way down. Once we get over to here, we just poke it around the seam here. And then the weather stripping here actually just kind of pulls back. We just poke the wire down the weather stripping all the way down until we get down on the floor there. And once you get to this point here, kind of where the door opening is, there's a piece here for your fuse box cover. You can see at the bottom there's a label showing you, hey, that this panel pulls off to access your fuses. It just pulls off of there. Just grab it there at the bottom and yank it off. It'll give you a little bit more room to work with, because that's that wire right there that we ran from the LED. You can kind of get in here and feed it down and then get it over towards your cylinder, because that's where we're going to make our connection. So I've got the wiring pulled down now. It was neatly stored up here. I'll just use a cable tie and store it back up there. So the way I had everything connected here, this is from the LED on the back side of the mirror. We've got all our major components kind of set up, so now it's just time to start hooking it all together. So this is the one we ran from the LED. You can see it's got 2 wires that come out of it, a black and a red. The black wire needs to go to ground, and I just took the butt connector that comes in the kit, I crimped it onto the black wire from the LED, and then you get a little bit of extra black wire, just you can use yourself, and that's what I put on the other side. I stripped some back, connected some of the excess black wire you get in your kit, and I routed that wire through a little opening here towards the outside of this paneling that we had removed. And then I put a ring terminal on the other side of the black wire. That way we can get our ground from one of the existing studs located over here on the side. And you can see here, I just removed that nut, put the ring terminal over the stud, and then reinstall the nut to get my ground right there. Next, we've got the red wire that's coming out of the harness that's coming from our LED. The red wire needs to hook to the blue wire coming off of your reed switch. Now, we didn't really talk about the reed switch yet, but the cylinder that we mounted up over here has a little switch that's coming off the top of it right here. And this little harness that's coming off of this, we just kind of routed over that direction. And that's this harness right over here. The reed switch has a blue wire, and they say violet in the instructions. That wire looks more like a brown color to me. So it's kind of up to you, brown, violet, which whatever you want to interpret that as. But you can see here that the blue wire from the reed switch is connecting to the red wire from the LED harness that's located on the back of the mirror. So we got the LED harness hooked up. Now let's go on and finish up the reed switch. The reed switch is violet or brown wire, whichever color you see there. We'll connect to a power source. We need to connect to our battery. So you get some excess brown wire in your kit, and we utilize that to connect to a power source. So I connected the with one of the butt connectors in the kit, connected to that violet or brown wire there, and then connected to the excess brown wire in the kit, and then I route this outside into the engine compartment. There's a grommet located right up in here. Let's move these wires out of the way a little bit. And it's located right up in there. This big harness that you see running here will run right into that grommet. And we're gonna go ahead and head outside because you can probably get a better idea of where we're passing it through out there. So we're now right outside the vehicle, and I'm wiggling the hose, airline hose, and you can see the brown wire as well, where I poked it into the grommet. This grommet is located directly behind the fuse box where we mounted the main operating unit outside. So it's kind of hard to see with our camera here, but at home you guys shouldn't have a problem kind of reaching back in there and seeing where this grommet's located. I took a screwdriver and I just poked it through the grommet, and then after I poked it through this black airline tubing that comes in your kit, I poked that through the grommet. And then I used some electrical tape to tape the brown wire to the black tubing, and then I pulled the black tubing to get the wire to come through with it, because it's hard to get the wire through, but the black tubing that comes in your kit's stiff enough that you should be able to force it through the grommet after you give it a little pilot hole with like a Phillips screwdriver. That's exactly what I used. After we got the airline hose and the brown wire routed in, we already showed you where we hooked the brown wire that goes to the reed switch, and then it'll eventually go to our battery. We also took the black airline tubing that comes in our kit and we attached that to the cylinder that's attached to our pedal. The end here is a swivel fitting. It does swivel, so just angle that which is most appropriate for your hose, because you don't want to kink your hose, and just push the end of your hose right into it. It's a quick connect fitting, so the hose just slides in and should lock into place. You shouldn't be able to pull it back out unless you press down on the little collar here on the end. So now we're back outside. We finished all of our connections in there. We'll just pick right back up with the brown wire. So we left it connected to the reed switch inside. Once it's routed here to the outside, that's exactly what this brown wire is here. Now, before going straight over to the battery over there on the other side, we also need to put power to our breakaway switch that comes in our kit. So I actually take that brown wire and I run it a little bit down here to about this area here. Because the breakaway switch wires that come in our kit, I routed those from the switch and routed them up to this point, but that's as long as our breakaway switch wires are. So that's why we decided to hook them up down here. So after getting our brown wire routed to this location, I actually took the brown wire and I cut the excess off of the brown wire. I just need a distance that goes from where it'll attach to the breakaway switch in there to the reed switch. And then I took the excess that I had cut off, I stripped back both the ends over here on this side and I twisted those two together. I attached those to a heat shrink butt connector. This does not come in your kit. You do get butt connectors, but you don't get the heat shrink variety, and I highly recommend all of your connections here that are outside the vehicle are upgraded to the heat shrink butt connectors to protect them from moisture and corrosion. So we attached both ends of that brown wire that we stripped back now to one side of the butt connector, and on the other side of our butt connector we attach it to our breakaway switch. It doesn't matter which wire you hook it to. I prefer to hook it to the orange just to help identify that that is going to be the hot side of the switch. So the remaining brown wire now that we've got coming out of here, that excess that we cut off, we take that portion of the brown wire and then we go back up and across to make our way over to our battery there to get power from there. We have just enough brown wire here to make the trip to about this point, which is fine for us because you want to make sure you use the fuse harness that comes in your kit to give us proper circuit protection. So we use another heat shrink butt connector there, and we attach it to the fuse harness. When you get the fuse harness, pull it out of your box, the wire is actually looped, so you just cut the wire right in the middle to break the loop and strip back each end. One end connects to the butt connector, it's going to our brown wire, and the other end connects to a ring terminal so you can attach it to your battery. We simply attach it to the battery right here by removing the nut with a 13mm socket, slid our ring terminal on, and then reinstalled the nut. The fuse you do not want installed at this time. That way there's no chance you're going to cause any shorts. The last step we're going to do is install our fuse there. That way throughout the whole process of installing our components, we don't accidentally cause any shorts at any point. So we'll come back to install the fuse later. Let's head back over to our box because we got more connections to make over there. All right, so now that we're back over here at our box, as far as our electrical connections go, we've only got a couple left. You've got 2 black wires coming out of your box here, and you have 1 wire left on your breakaway switch that we haven't hooked up yet. Well, easily for us, we're gonna take one of these black wires. It doesn't matter which one, and you're gonna route that down to the breakaway switch and connect it to the other wire on your breakaway switch. Since we already hooked up the orange one to the power side, that means we're going to use the black one here and attach it to the other side of our wire here. Now you might look at it here and think, hey, it's red here. That's because we didn't have quite enough length to reach from our box down to our breakaway switch while giving us enough excess to be able to remove this cover so that the customer can still access their fuses. So we extended the wire. You do get some excess red wire in your kit, so we went ahead and decided to use that for this portion. So we just take the black wire here that you see, and you can see we extended it, and again I left quite a bit of excess so that way the fuse box lid can be pulled off. We attach it with a heat shrink butt connector, bring it on down, and then attach with another heat shrink butt connector to the other side of our breakaway switch there. We got 1 wire left, and that's the other black wire coming out of our box. That just needs to go to ground, and we get ground right from the stud here. So I just put a ring terminal on the other black wire, removed that with a 13mm socket, slid it in place, and then reinstalled the bolt, and that'll get our ground for us. So now electrically we've got everything wired up. We'll be moving on to finish up the vacuum line and our air line. To get our air line hooked up, that's what we're going to do now. Is the air line will come back to the vacuum. So we had already routed a line inside and connected it to the cylinder on the inside. You're going to have a ton of extra line. So after you got it connected to the cylinder in there, all your excess line that's out here, you want to just make sure you've got enough excess that you can remove your lid and then cut the line. Then you're going to poke that line into the air in. Our air out, just take the rest of your hose and poke it into the air out, and this is going to route to the fitting that we've got installed at the front of the vehicle. So we kind of just route it down again, leaving ourselves some excess, and just go around the side. You can see here's the line here, it just kind of goes down around the side. We follow our factory wiring down towards the fitting underneath. Now when you're cutting your air line in your kit here, it's important that you have a nice clean square cut to properly seal on the quick connect fittings. So you want to make sure you're using an appropriate pair of cutters. If you just use side cutters, it pinches the line before it cuts it, and you get kind of a V-shaped notch. It doesn't cut very clean. These cutters here has a nice sharp edge on one side and will ensure that you get a nice clean square cut. You'll hold it perpendicular with the line, and you see how it just glides right on through there, and we get a clean cut. That will seal properly in these quick connect fittings. So now we're underneath the vehicle. This is where our line passed down. Then we just bring it across over to where our fitting was. We cut it to length and then poke it into our fitting. We're now back over at the main operating unit here. We're gonna finish up the installation with the vacuum line connections. So on the vacuum line port, it's just gonna be a little rib section here. You're gonna get some vacuum line in your kit. That's what this is right here. Cut yourself about a 2-inch, maybe 2 to 3 inch section. And then you can take the check valve that comes in your kit and poke that into that 2 to 3 inch section. Make sure that it's the black side of the check valve that is being poked into the line facing your unit here. The clear or green colored side is gonna then connect to the rest of the hose that comes in your kit for that vacuum line, and we're gonna route it on over towards the vacuum line on your brake booster over here. That's what this is right here. You'll then cut that to length. Usually I just leave the excess here for now, just kind of hang it off to the side. And then I'll tap in to the vacuum line over here. So the vacuum line, this is the factory vacuum line that you see right here. We cut it there, and then I did cut a little bit of a section out of it so that way we could add our components here. This over here where the hose clamp is, the hose clamps are at the beginning and end of the factory line. All this is the stuff that we added in the middle. So the factory line is a thicker diameter than what the line is that comes in your kit, but Demco does provide adapters so that way you can step this line down to the smaller size and then step it back up again. So we poke in the adapter that comes in our kit, so the thicker side of the adapter will poke into the factory line, and then we cut another 2 to 3 inch section here and poke that onto the smaller side of the adapter. There we insert the T-fitting that comes in our kit, and then cut another small section of line and insert the check valve that comes in our kit. We want the green side to be facing towards the booster and the black side continuing on toward the engine. Another 2 to 3 inch section of line from our vacuum line that comes provided in the kit. We'll cut that and slide that on, poke in the adapter that comes in the kit, and then we can use the adapter to reattach it to the thicker factory line. We'll then use the hose clamps that come in the kit to secure those adapters to that factory line so it can't go anywhere, and then cut the line that we had already routed over from our unit here to length and poke that onto the third leg of the T. So now we can test our system, and we're going to do that by pulling the breakaway switch pin here at the front. Now, you don't always get a signal from this because you need air from your motorhome to actually operate the system, but it does usually come with a very small pre-charge. And by pulling the pin, usually we can see the light on the back of the mirror there illuminate if things are working properly. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the pin, and we see our light move. It's probably not moving the pedal because there's not enough air in there charged to really apply the brakes yet, but we can see that it moved it just enough to turn our light on, which lets us know that our braking system is operating. I'll put the pin back in, and it turns the light off. So everything looks good here on this side. So now we're ready to grab our motor home and start installing the components that go on that side. And that completes our installation of Demco's Air Force One supplemental braking system on our 2012 Chevy Silverado.